Good evening and welcome to the Healdsburg High School reopening Facebook Live event. My name is Connie Lopez Marks and I'm the Assistant Principal at Healdsburg High School. Buenas noches y bienvenidos al evento de en vivo de Facebook. Estamos aquí, si prefieran oír esta presentación en español, pueden ir al bajo de la página y hay un globo. Okay, our panelists this evening, we have Mr. Halliday, Bill Halliday, who is our principal. We also have Mr. Chris Vanden Heuvel, who is our assistant superintendent. We have Miss Erin Fender, who is our curriculum and instruction director. We also have Miss Diane Conger, who is our director of student services. And we also are very lucky to have two of our faculty members with us. We have Miss Jamie Atwood, who is one of our teachers in mathematics. And then we also have Miss Riley Nielsen, who is one of our biology instructors. So before we begin, Mr. Halliday, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I would. I want to just thank you for joining us this evening. And we have a slide deck, a presentation for your information and to try to answer as many questions as we can. The course of the evening is going to be that presentation that's going to come from all of our participants tonight, Ms. Marks and myself and everybody that you were just introduced to. And then we'll try to answer as many of your questions that you sent forward to us in the course of the presentation. And if there is time at the end, we have somebody recording any of the questions that you've typed in to Facebook. And if we have the opportunity to answer those, we'll do so at the end. But I do want to remind you that you're more than welcome to send your questions if we do not get to that. Send that directly to Ms. Marks and myself, and we'll make sure that we get a response to you promptly. This is a very unique and challenging time for all of us, and the panelists and all of our district personnel and all our school personnel are here to support you through this process. It has a lot of learning along the way, and just want to remind you that we're in this together. So feel free to communicate to us throughout the course of this presentation and also throughout the beginning of the school year. Ms. Marks, you ready for me to share this presentation?
Yes, please. Let's go ahead with our slides. Oop.
There we go. Okay. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about what does distance learning look like. We had a run at it last year. We learned a lot, as I mentioned before, but we come forward this year in a distance learning platform that has some very different characteristics than before, and we'll explain those to you. We're going to talk about logistics of school, communication with school, back and forth parent meetings, how you communicate with us. We're going to talk about expectations quite a bit, about what our classroom expectations are and how they differ very much from last year's experience from March 13th on. And then we're going to talk just a little bit about support and an overall school view. We have to begin by saying that our instructional models will be fluid and potentially will change throughout the school year. We, as I'm sure you're aware, have been directed by the state that we will start distance learning until such time that Sonoma County is off the state watch list for COVID-19 cases for 14 days. At that time, we can reevaluate our model and look at having some structures with in-person instruction. Following the lead of Superintendent Vanden Heuvel, we will reassess this model on September 14th, 2020. To again look at how long we've been on the watch list and what our possibilities are for changes in instructional format. And if we are able to transition possibly to a hybrid system. Again, for us, that would be half the school students here on one day and the other half the next. We would hope for, in an ideal circumstance, be able to make that transition sometime around October 1st. Just to be clear, we would give all of our families and all of our community members, at least a couple weeks notice if we're going to change our instructional model. We do have to remind everybody in a positive way that we are a community that works very closely with our union organizations, and all the changes that have been implemented due to COVID-19 are negotiated because it is a change of work condition. We've been working very positively with our teachers union, our clerical and classified staff union to make sure that we have agreements in all fronts. Our distance learning plan will have an increased structure, support, and accountability. Last year, we experienced a great deal of frustration from students, parents, and teachers around the hold harmless policy, meaning that students' grades could not decrease past March 13th. While we understood the intention of that model, and I would have to say I personally supported that model, and it was addressing some equity concerns that we would have in any school community when we went to distance learning on such a short notice. It did make it difficult to have a sense of accountability for students. It did make it difficult to have students push themselves to their hardest during this time when they realized there wasn't a structured grading system like they were accustomed to. The hold harmless aspect of distance learning is no longer in effect, and the structure in our instructional model right now will include grading for the work that's completed, the interaction and the engagement that your students demonstrate through the course of each grading period. We'll have a structured weekly schedule, which I'll share with you as a draft in a few slides. Teachers will be communicating with students and parents on a daily basis and all the days that the class is scheduled, and it will not be as fluid as it was in the spring. It'll be a much more structured, more along the lines of a traditional school bell schedule, of course in a distance learning environment. And there is a daily minimum check-in with teachers that will ideally be interactive. It could be a Zoom, it could be email exchange, it could be a variety of electronic communications. But the bottom line is there's accountability for a daily interaction between the teachers and their students. Thanks to our team, we have translated all our slides to Spanish. Our Spanish-speaking community members are listening through Zoom with translation, but we do want to make sure that we have all communication best possible in Spanish. And I think we forgot to remind everybody that we are recording this, and we'll be placing the recording of the presentation on our Facebook page and on our webpage in the days to come. Connie, I'm going to ask if you want to jump in at any point and add to what I'm sharing. Please do. Again, I'm going to repeat myself a little bit. We're going to have increased interventions and support for students. Again, more of an academic structure to the day, and we'll also have the ability to continue with support through our counseling department, Ms. Flores and Ms. Mace, about academic planning and support for families and students if there are any emotional needs. Our team's been working very diligently in making sure that all Chromebooks are distributed, are in good working order, and we'll be working with families about connectivity issues, either through working with our local internet providers and structuring some support for those families, or hotspots, and we'll continue to have our tech helpline and tech support available for all. We also are in the process of ordering some rudimentary and basic supplies that all students need to make sure that, again, there's an equitable access to supplies that are necessary for students to work at home, be it working on a long-term project or just basic educational tools like need rulers, pencils, pens, calculators, etc.
Mr. Halliday, I'm going to jump in real quickly. We seem to be having some issues with your audio where you're coming in and out, so you may want to check that for a minute. But I think this might be a good spot for me to just reiterate that with our virtual platform that we're moving to, our I'm sorry, here we go. With our virtual platform that we're going to, the Chromebooks and the technology are going to be essential. And the district has really made the commitment to support our students. Today, we spent the day passing out nearly 400 Chromebooks to students here at the high school. And as soon as all of the additional technology is activated and ready to go for those that need it, we will have the hotspots ready to go just before school begins. So, you know, we do want to make sure that everyone has functioning technology where they are so that they can interact with their teachers. And our teachers are actually going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. And just to piggyback on what Mr. Holliday was saying, our teachers were very excited to come up with materials lists of items that they thought would be beneficial to our students that they could use at home for project-based learning. So, and our teachers are going to talk about that this evening so that you kind of have an idea, what is it going to look like when we send materials home and how are they going to utilize it? You want to move to the next slide then, and let's see if we can hear you now.
I seem to be having some tech. I'm sorry, it's not advancing. Let me try again. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, this is again our draft bell schedule. It comes in 2 slides, so bear with me. I'm going to talk about, and Connie, if my vocals go out, please jump in and fill in what I miss here. Technical glitches. I'm going to talk about synchronistic instruction and asynchronistic instruction. Synchronistic is just live, on time, online instruction. And the first column there is period 1 to 7. The next column is the 10 minutes, and that's basically our Monday check-in time, where all teachers will have a brief check-in period with all students to talk about the week, talk about assignments, and push out information and materials. That's also where attendance will be taken. The next 4 columns on the other side of period 1 to 7 are the actual instructional times for those periods. And we're looking at somewhere around a 40-minute instructional period. And this could be a direct Zoom where all students are engaged for the entire 40 minutes, or it could be a teacher. And I think Ms. Nielsen and Ms. Atwood will talk a little bit about different instructional strategies they used in summer school for engagement, for students to break out into breakout groups and to do projects in small groups, and then maybe come back into the Zoom at the end of the period. And again, the idea is this looks very much like our regular 7-period day, but we believe strongly that students and teachers have a limited amount of minutes that they can be fully engaged in participating in the Zoom. So we've tried to monitor that a little bit. And then I'm going to go to the next slide and talk about
before you go on, I want to clarify one thing. So I know it doesn't say it on the top, but if you were to look at this, the schedule, you'll see that our periods 1, 3, 5, and 7 are going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then our 2, 4, and 6 periods would be on Wednesday and Friday. So just imagine if those were the days of the week. So we'll have even and odd days.
So very much like our traditional 7-period day schedule. And again, this is the second slide about the second half of those days on, again, the 1, 3, 5, 7 and the 2, 4, 6 days. This 40-minute time would be for students, and it'd be a 30-minute time on Monday, there's a mistake there with the 10 minutes on the left-hand side, but a 40-minute time on the block days, on the Monday, on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday days, would be for assigned coursework. And this would be, again, students may be assigned to do a project in a small group outside, connecting electronically. It could be students just working on essays, solving mathematical problems. And this would be the time that the teacher would not be live, but would be available to answer questions via email or other methods during that time when students were stuck or needed some additional support. So again, the idea is to have half of our 80-minute blocks structured with interactive time with the instructor, and the second half be more of a work period, but again, with constant communication as best as possible between the student and the teacher. Anything you want to add to that, Connie?
No, I think you got it.
Okay. Okay. And it's my pleasure, our pleasure, to introduce Ms. Atwood and Ms. Nielsen, who are going to talk about summer school. And I just want to start by saying we had an incredibly successful summer school, and it was based, frankly, on the great organization of Ms. Marks and the teaching of Ms. Atwood, Ms. Nielsen, Mr. Kavanaugh, and Mr. Dennis Ojeda Jones did a great job. We learned a lot, and that's why we've asked our teachers to come in to talk about what were the benefits of some of their strategies and how that led to better engagement and success for students.
I'm Ms. Atwood, and I think I was going to start this out. The four of us who taught summer school, to be quite honest, we were really worried about two things. Would our students be able to understand and learn effectively through distance learning? And what was really important to us is, of course, the connection that we make with our students. Were we going to be able to make that personal connection, which is really the best part of our jobs? And we were all really pleased to discover that we were able to do that. And our students did well over summer school. You know, different classes are taught different ways depending on the topic, the instructional strategies of the teacher, the personalities of the teacher. The four of us, we were teaching English, ag science, math, and then one of us was doing many subjects. So of course we had to use different strategies. We used project-based learning. Sometimes it was direct instruction. We would have students do student collaboration. And then we had to learn how to have our students interact with each other and with us. And there were several ways that we did that. And I really saw our students mature over the course of the summer in how they were able to interact with us. I'm going to leave Zoom breakout rooms because Ms. Nielsen is going to talk a lot about that because she taught all of us how to do it. We use discussion prompts on our learning platform, PSL. I used whiteboards. I had my kids work problems and they would hold it up to the camera so I could see what they had done. Our students created PDFs and showed their work to us, or pictures. And what I really was proud to see my students do is how proactive they became in emailing me and in emailing all of us so that we were able to, you know, they couldn't drop by the room like they usually do. And they learned that email is how they drop out the room. And Ms. Nielsen, if you would take it from here, that would be great.
Absolutely. As we shift to the next slide, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Ms. Nielsen. I taught agricultural biology this summer, and I have not been teaching very long, and so to be given this task, it was actually a huge learning curve for all of us. And so I just wanted to begin by saying that by no means are we perfect at everything that we did, but we did learn a lot, and we grew from this experience, and we were able to test things out, see what strategies worked well, what didn't. And even since the end of summer school, we've been continuing to professionally develop ourselves so that we have great effective practices in our classrooms when we go back virtually. So I wanted to touch on 3 different strategies that I personally used in my classroom this summer. And again, all of this was online. I had the ability to send home materials at the beginning of each session, which made a huge difference because students were able to learn at home with these materials, conduct experiments on their own, and it was an extremely equitable way to make sure that every single student had the same experience. And so the first area I wanted to touch on was personal discovery. So each student was able to discover concepts on their own and see what was happening in various different experiments that they conducted. So for example, we dissected a lily to learn about the anatomy of a flower, the fertilization process, and to introduce meiosis. Students were able to propagate succulents to learn about mitosis, which is that picture that you see they're showing all of the leaves and roots beginning to develop. The picture with the balloon, every single student had this experiment going on at home in front of them. And we watched this happen together where the yeast was releasing oxygen and blowing up each of the balloons. And so students were able to start asking, why is this happening? How is this happening? To learn more about cellular respiration. And then finally, the last picture in the right, students were conducting an agri-science experiment over the course of the 3 weeks that I had them in the first session. So they grew 3 different types of pumpkins, and they created their own hypothesis, and they wrote an entire agri-science research paper from home. And what was great about this is while they were having their own personal discovery, I also utilized Zoom breakout sessions to have them peer review each other's work to reflect on each of their agri-science paper that they were writing before they submitted it. So if we go to the next slide.
Hey, Riley, can I interrupt just 1 second?
Absolutely.
There was a question about interpretation, so I just want to give instructions. Si necesitan interpretación en español, pueden imprimir el globo abajo el fondo de la pantalla ahí donde dice interpretación, interpretation en inglés, y van a entrar la interpretación al español. Okay, thanks, Riley.
Of course. So utilizing that tool on Zoom with the breakout rooms, I had students collaborate with one another. So one example was peer reviewing their agri-science papers. Another example is that students created a presentation on an agricultural issue together using Google Slides. They had to discuss with one another the issue, research together, and they put together this presentation which they were able to present to the class and teach each other about different ag issues and sustainable methods that can be implemented in the industry. And then finally, the last example that I wanted to touch on for a strategy that I used in my class, we could go to the next slide, is modeling. And so these are 3 different examples of how students were able to model their learning at home. All of these supplies that you see were supplies that I sent home with them. So students dissected a gummy bear to learn about the anatomical positions when we were doing our anatomy section. Students modeled at home the flow through the food chain and food web. And so you can see that they were able to show how energy flowed from the sun to tertiary consumers. And then finally, they modeled, these are only 3 examples, but there were many. They modeled DNA at home, and they had to create a key about the different structures and components of a DNA model. And so these were 3 different strategies that I personally used in my ag science, ag biology class. And we had a lot of fun throughout the 2 sessions. I was able to build genuine relationships with the students. There was a lot of, conversations going, great dialogue, questions being asked. And we were also able to learn about each other because of the way that the classroom was set up. And so I just wanted to share and wrap things up by saying that this is doable and it can be enjoyable. And we had a great time during summer school, and those students were excited to be there. So I'm really looking forward to starting school next week.
And then I'll finish this out. While we as teachers enjoyed teaching summer school so much, we thought it was probably important to find out what our students thought about it. So at the end of our 2 summer school sessions, we sent out a Google form asking some of the questions of our students. One of them, they wanted to know what was the favorite part of the summer school. And, I won't read these comments to you, but I thought it was really cute that they were so happy to be able to talk to each other and see each other's voices, faces, even though it was on Zoom. And they were very happy to have teachers interacting with them. We asked them what they learned, and I have to tell you, I was so happy to hear their responses because they used academic language when they were talking about what they learned. They talked about, I learned graphing, I learned Theodore Roosevelt. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, I kind of learned stuff. So that really was a measure to me that they had an academics and that it had been very successful. So as Ms. Nielsen was saying, we are excited to be teaching again. Of course, we would love to be in a room with them, but for health and safety, this is what we need to do, and we can be very successful. Our students grew so much, they became much more technologically adept, and I have good feelings for going forward from here.
Anything to add, Ms. Marks, about summer school experience?
Sorry, it took me a moment to get my speaker off. I just have to reiterate that, it was some incredible staff and some motivated students, and everyone did participate, and we were very successful in utilizing the technology. One of the questions that kind of chimed in was, were you able, when you had the students in the breakout rooms, to go into the breakout room to monitor the students and see what was happening, to go from breakout room to breakout room?
Yes, I did pop into each breakout room multiple times. I kind of rotated through. They also had the ability to go back to the main room. And if I was in the main room, then they were able to ask their question. And this is also a great feature, because if we have aides in our classroom, there's the ability to send a student with an aide into a breakout room to allow them more time to understand the concepts that we're covering before they move on. And so the breakout room is a great function on Zoom. And I think it's a space where students feel more comfortable unmuting themselves, getting to know each other. And so every time I popped into a room, they were always chatting, it was great to hear, because it's just like chatter in a classroom that you love while they're working. Especially when they're collaborating and working together to solve problems.
Great, thanks so much. I believe we're ready to move on, Mr. Halliday.
Okay, again, thank you to Connie and Jamie and Riley for bringing that forward, their successes over summer school. Attendance, we wanted to talk a little bit about attendance and accountability. Student attendance will be taken every day of the week in every class, period. Attendance is basically the act of recording and reporting that a student is present in class. Distance learning obviously gives us a few challenges with that. You just can't raise your hand and say, I'm here, in the same way. So participation and engagement are real sources of indicators that a student is involved in the classroom and can be marked and positively in attendance. By that we mean on those 10-minute check-ins on a Monday, if the student just responds back that they're here and they reply to a teacher's email, that would be attendance. If a student checks in and participates in a Zoom, that would be attendance. If a student turns in their assignment by the end of that class period, that would be positive attendance. We'll be monitoring this very closely, and all the teachers, again, will be taking attendance each period, 5 days a week. Engagement. One of the biggest concerns we had, and something that's very critical for our success as we move forward, is that students have much higher levels of universal engagement with their teachers. As our teachers just demonstrated, we are very much committed to being creative and innovative and dynamic in our instruction, which of course is inviting our students in, not just to be good students and get marked in positive attendance, but actually learn how to learn and enjoy this distance learning experience. All of our professional development for our teachers is going to be based on innovative and engaging distance learning and instruction, how to build community and build relationships within our classrooms, so our students, again, don't feel distant from our school, but they feel actively engaged in their education, even if they're not able to be in the classroom. Each teacher has, we got a lot of input from our teachers about this, and each teacher has this distance learning class guidelines, which is expectations and requirements for the classroom. It reminds students to turn off their music. It reminds them to dress appropriately. It reminds them to arrive before the class with a good mindset. It reminds them to make sure that they're in a spot, wherever it may be, where they can focus on the lesson. And it goes on to talk about proper interaction with their colleagues, proper interaction with their classmates. It talks about how a teacher can be a monitor. There may be a student for a monitor. It talks about what to do if you have technology challenges, and it also talks about doing your coursework after class. This is something that all of our teachers will work with their students at the beginning of the school year, and there may be some modifications based on the subject area. But again, this is a very structured guideline about how to be engaged and active and participating in your class in a community-minded and respectful way. Okay. And Ms. Marks, please, again, jump in at any point when you want to add to this. One of the, quite frankly, difficult points for us is that we work really hard at Healdsburg High School to have our school be a welcoming and accessible place, that families and community members, parents and students all feel welcome to walk into school and come in and knock on anybody's door and ask what questions and get what support is necessary. And at this time, we just have to monitor our classroom differently. And we need to say to you tonight that we very much, it pains us not to be able to have the same kind of community right now and have it be much more structured. But we also felt like we did need to remind everybody that we're trying the best we can to keep everybody safe, keep our students safe, and follow the guidelines that are necessary for us to get through this. Again, the public health guidelines. We'll have limited entrance points at the high school. We'll ask that all visitors give us a call and make an appointment for coming in. We will not be able to accommodate drop-in visitors. We'll have all visitors enter the main entrance. We'll do a quick health check and have people sign in. We will be having all state and health guidelines will be followed. And that when families need to have a individual education plan meeting or a 504 meeting, or would just like to meet with their teacher or talk to Ms. Marks or myself or the counselors, we just ask that that be arranged beforehand, and so we can make sure that we're planning for it and we take care of all the safety requirements that's necessary.
I just want to chime in really quickly. I think for all of our personal safety and for the safety of our staff and our students and for you as well as parents, we just want to remind you that we ask that when you come to school, we do have doorbells set up on the outside of the doors, that you ring the doorbell. Our staff will come out and open the door for you. that you'll come into the main office. We will do temperature checks. If your temperature is below 100, then we're permitted to allow you to continue your business here on campus. We'll have you sign in. If not, then we'll have to ask you to come back at another time, just for the safety of our staff and for yourself as well. And again, just as Mr. Halliday said, we really would prefer that you make an appointment, call us. A lot of these, the business that we normally would conduct face-to-face, we're really able to conduct online. And we want to make sure that we handle everything that we need to get the students enrolled and in class, and all of our meetings that we can, and really get that taken care of while we're still protecting everyone. So we really appreciate you supporting us with that.
Tengo que interrumpir y decir, sí, porque había unas preguntas en Facebook. Si necesitan traducción al español, tienen que entrar por el link de Zoom y luego abajo en el fondo de la pantalla hay un globo donde dice interpretation o interpretación en inglés. Tienen que imprimir ahí y luego van a estar en el lugar donde están interpretando el español.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna ask Ms. Conger, are you still with us?
Hi.
I'm reintroducing Diana Conger, our Director of Special Education, who's here to talk a little bit about this side and also has assisted us with questions that may come up. Just a general overview, all services are still delivered through an online, are still available, but delivered through an online format. We will be having all our IEPs held virtually. There'll be a combination of class meetings via Google Classroom for special education students in their special education classrooms, just like regular education classrooms. But due to the case manager aspect of special education services, there will be one-on-one virtual meetings between teacher, case manager, and students. We'll be working very diligently to make sure that we have weekly contact with all families and really monitor progress closely, and again, monitoring attendance and engagement in the classroom. And our case managers, Ms. Hahn, Ms. Ronas, will be working closely with our general education teachers to ensure that accommodations are being provided appropriately in the online environment. But we do have to also say that new assessments and realizations will most likely be delayed to a certain extent due to the distance learning program and our restrictions. Anything you'd like to add to that, Ms. Conger?
The only thing I'd like to add is that each special education, I know we've had a couple of questions about what does that look like in a distance learning format. And each one of our special education teachers has an assigned class period for their special education services. So the services will be aligned to those class periods, just like any other schedule of classes. And then the other thing that's come up a number of times is, when will I know? When will I know what my program looks like? And I am going to tell you that they're actively working on that right now. And they will be reaching out to you likely within the next week or two to schedule a time to meet, to individually go over your own students' individual distance learning plan. So tailored to the student themselves, not a global sort of distance learning plan, but unique to each student.
And one thing I did forget to add is that we're doing everything we can to have as many of our IEP and 504 meetings on Mondays. We're doing everything we can to ensure that students, special education and 504 students, are not taken out of their classes because that instructional time is so critical. We won't be able to hit that mark of having all the meetings on a Monday, but we really are, we're working on that.
Mm-hmm. And the only other thing I might add is, honestly, if you have any questions whatsoever, reach out to your case managers if you know who they are. And if you don't know who they are, like you're an incoming freshman and you may not be familiar with your case manager, reach out to Mr. Halliday or Miss Marks, and they can point you in the right direction. So don't worry without asking those questions via email or phone call.
Thank you, Ms. Conner.
Sure.
Okay, we have about 15 minutes left in time. We'll try to answer some of the questions first that have come in prior to this meeting that you sent in when you sent in your survey information. And I'm going to lump them in a couple broad categories. And any panelists, if you want to dive in with additional responses to mine, please feel free. We received a lot of questions about sports. And we were waiting until the end of July when the California Interscholastic Federation was going to make their determination about our ability to have sports in the fall. And they made the determination, and then that was seconded by the North Coast section and our league, the North Bay League, that all fall sports would be canceled, and we would condense all of our sports into the winter months and the spring months, which means that the earliest that we'll be able to begin practices, if we have met the criteria from public health, again, 14 days of off the watch list and being able to participate in different activities without the type of social distancing we are supposed to be adhering to now. We would start on December 14th. What does that mean? That means that if we're able to, the first football practice and cross-country practice and volleyball practice would be in the second week and into the third week of December. And their season for all those winter sports, well, fall sports that are now winter sports, would be much shorter. For example, if we were able to run a football season or a volleyball season, we may only play our league opponents. Instead of having a 10-game football season, it might be a 6-game football season. Instead of a 20-game volleyball season, it might be a 12-game volleyball season or a 13-game volleyball season. And then the sports like the co-ed sports, sports like tennis and golf, they're usually separated in the fall and the spring by gender. Those would be combined in the spring: golf, tennis, swimming, of course. Track would be in the latter part of the spring. Cross country would start in the wintertime. This is a great, if you want additional information about particular schedules, it would be best to send me an email or send Brian Osborne, our athletic director, an email if you haven't received information from your sons or daughters' coaches to this point. The second question about physical education, about sports, was about PE credit. Many of our students had planned to get their final physical education graduation requirement fulfilled by participating in a sport that has now been postponed. For those students who are seniors, Mix and Marks and the counselors have put those seniors in PE or conditioning classes on their schedule because we cannot ensure at this time that they will be able to participate in the sport, thus earning those credits. And it's essential that we make sure that every senior's schedule is aligned with fulfillment of their graduation requirements. We've also done that for some of our juniors who also need PE credit and we're planning to participate in sports. They have a little bit more flexibility, of course, but we are encouraging juniors who can't participate in the sport at this time to sign up for a PE and conditioning class, and don't leave that to chance and what happens in the future.
Mr. Halliday, I'm going to piggyback on that answer right there and that question. We've had lots of questions with regards to student schedules. So just so you know, your counselors have been working diligently to work out conflicts and to really get the schedules ready to go. So we're hoping that we will be able by Friday, this Friday, to open up the student portal, the parent portal, and the teacher portal so that everyone can see student schedules. That's what our ideal goal is. So just be prepared. You'll be getting emails that say your schedule is ready. It's not a paper one. You'll just log into your Aries portal and you'll be able to see your courses for the semester. I have a few other questions if you want me to go ahead and I can pose them, and then I'll leave them for the panelists. How's that?
That sounds good.
Okay, so this is going to be for seniors. I have questions about seniors. They would like to know when they're going to have their senior pictures taken and other senior events.
Okay. It's going to be a little bit like our distribution of materials, which I want to touch on, is that we will be able to distribute materials for particular classes on a scheduled basis. We'll be able to give out art materials. We'll be able to give out auto shop carburetor kits. We'll be able to do that, but it'll be structured and organized to make sure that students don't show up in a large group, that they come one at a time. If you think about that model, that's what our senior portraits are going to be like. We will have a very tight schedule, and we'll have Jocelyn's come in and set up a safe room to do these photos in one student at a time, and we'll get that done. We generally do our class pictures towards the end of September, Ms. Marks?
Yes.
And we'll do the senior pictures, you know, well after that, but again, we'll set up that structure for those schedules. And then you're going to have individual pickup times and delivery times for supplies and materials. The students aren't banned from campus, kind of are, but they're invited on under structure to take care of things like this. We will also, probably within the first few weeks of school, Ms. Marks and I will organize a senior parent event, either a Facebook Live or some type of Zoom electronic, because senior parents are going to have a lot of questions and we want to make sure that we're talking directly to them.
Okay, so, well, we talked about the ID cards. Other questions that we have here. We talked about the bell schedule. Class time, it says, will there be reduced class time or will it reflect prior year schedules? I think that Mr. Halliday addressed that, but I kind of wanted to go back to the class schedule and the class time, and just want to reiterate that you're going to be getting lots of phone calls from me personally and my staff if your child is not zooming in on the times that they're supposed to, because we want to make sure that they're involved in school. So we'll make sure that you have a copy of the schedule, you know when your child's supposed to zoom in, and they'll have the link so that they're able to be in contact with their teacher. We do have other questions about what is the earliest time that we would go back into full-time school learning?
Superintendent Vanden Heuvel, you want to take?
Yeah, I could say I could take that one. Well, it's obviously going to be contingent upon the state and their rules about being on the watch list. We are going to be bringing to the board a resolution this week that says we won't consider doing it until after September 31st. We need time to get started and to hit the ground running and get things established. I think it's highly unlikely that we'd be off the watch list by then, but that's what we're going to say to start, with the hope that we can get back to in-person learning just as soon as possible. But again, it's all dependent on direction from the state and when we deem it safe that we can bring kids back and have our staff come back in a safe manner. So September 31st is kind of our first checkpoint.
Okay.
So we have some other questions from Facebook Live that say, how are we going to do the CTE courses? So how are we going to provide our CTE courses and calculus through distance learning? Well, Miss Atwood, would you like to talk about math there?
Hi, I was just talking with the math department this morning, and I was talking with Mr. Sheehy, who's the calculus teacher. He will be preparing lessons. He will have some synchronous and some asynchronous lessons. He'll be using that time when we're together in a class to have discussions with the students. His students will be able to access him in a large group atmosphere. He'll also be using a small group as breakout sessions to talk with his students. Another technique that I used in the spring and also over the summer when students are having trouble is having students set up one-on-one Zoom meetings, which is exactly like when they come into our class and ask for a little bit of help. Of course, students can still get that help, but it'll take the place of a one-on-one Zoom meeting.
Mr. Halliday, you were sharing with me yesterday about chef's setup for CTE. Would you like to share with our guests?
Yeah, Chef Corsino has set up a filming studio in his culinary classroom, and he'll be filming some lessons. He'll be Zooming some lessons. He will be doing demonstrations from his kitchen, also from his lecture theater at the front of his classroom. He has a very enhanced program developed to do this, and he's actually really lucky. He's taught online courses for the junior college and CIA Culinary Institute of America in previous years. So we have a resident expert on this, which is helpful. I've also spoken with Terry, our pasta teacher, and Brian, our auto teacher, and John Chevalier, our digital arts. They are really working on a series of very engaging project-based activities for their students in those classrooms. We'll be purchasing some curriculums that we'll be able to share with the students online. We also are going to be purchasing and developing some kits. Oops. I guess we don't need the screen sharing. We'll be developing some kits to be able to distribute to students so they can get some hands-on activities similar, quite frankly, than what you saw Ms. Nielsen share about her ag bio classes. That students will be able to work on some projects. We are very concerned about CTE and how that can be dynamic, and we've actually got our CTE teachers working with consultant tomorrow. Chuck Wade from the County Office of Education will be working with them about lesson design and project development and design.
Great. So we have, I think that you already touched on this, but you might want to reiterate. We have a question again about the materials pickup. So when can parents expect the materials pickup for supplies for these classes?
I would say within the first week of school, so 10 to 15 days from now.
And then the last question that we probably have time for, and I apologize, but would be really important for our seniors as they're working on scholarships and college applications. How are they going to be able to get the support for that?
Similar to the academic support they're going to receive from their teachers. Ms. Nace and Mr. Forrest will be designing a way to push out information to their different grade level schools of what students, of what they need to take care of as far as their credit acquisition towards graduation and their college applications and their A through G compliance. And then Ms. Anderson, who will begin work this week, our college and career coordinator, she'll be working with individual students via Zoom about their scholarship applications, and she'll also be creating Zooms for interested students who would like to apply for different local and national scholarships about the process to do that. I anticipate a lot of survey information going out to seniors from Ms. Anderson's office about interest in particular college scholarship opportunities, and the same from Ms. Mason's before us around the application process. And as always, any parent can contact our counseling department to set up an individual meeting and consultation about this process. And again, as we mentioned earlier, we will definitely have a senior parent night in the coming weeks to make sure that all this information is accessible and all our senior parents know who to contact with their questions.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all so very much for coming in and being our panelists this evening, being here to support our families. Mr. Halliday, is there any last words you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, thanks to the panelists and thanks to our moderator. Thank you, Connie. And just another reminder, please don't be a stranger. You've got our numbers, you've got our emails. Set up an appointment if you'd like to speak to us, or if any questions we didn't get to tonight are left unanswered, give us a bell. Okay?
Good evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.